Hello, and thank you for joining us today on our summit, Revitalize You, How to Nourish Yourself to Heal Your Body, Mind, and Soul. I'm here today with Karen Asp. Karen, it's so nice that we finally got to connect, and I was been so looking forward to doing this interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Debbie. Thank you, and thanks for having me on the summit. And thanks to everybody who's listening today, or whenever it might be.
And for those of you who don't know Karen already, let me give you a brief introduction. Karen is an award-winning journalist who specializes in health, fitness, nutrition, travel, and animals. Her work has appeared in numerous publications, including Real Simple, Women's Day, Women's Health, Prevention, Forks Over Knives, Veg News, where she is actually a contributing writer, USA Today's magazines, Sentiment Media, Eating Well, AARP, Consumer Report, Shape, Self, and Men's Health. Wow, Karen, that is a huge list. She's also a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator, certified personal trainer, and athlete who holds 2 world records in Nordic walking. She's also passionate about animal rescue and spends her spare time volunteering with the local shelter, a golden retriever rescue organization, and Best Friends Animal Society. Karen, wow, you are a busy lady, and I really appreciate you taking your time today. And I love what you're doing. And certainly, I think you can provide us with a different perspective on things as a journalist as well. Maybe we'll hear some things that are a little bit different.
Yeah,
To
I hope so.
start, so to start with, maybe you could talk a little bit about your story. How did you get in this line of work and get into this subject matter?
Debbie, it was a long time ago. So this is back before magazines became endangered species as they are today. And I think that they might be on the extinction list soon. But that being said, back in the heyday of magazines, and for people who remember things like Red Book and all of those magazines, McCall's, etc. I started writing for those magazines back in that day, and I was really focused primarily on magazines. And I went to school as a journalist, or to study journalism, and graduated with a degree in journalism and literature. But I've also been very passionate about fitness, and I have been a fitness instructor, a personal trainer. I'm an athlete, so I train myself. But movement has always been a huge part of my life ever since I was a little girl, when I didn't know what exercise really was. It was just movement. And so the writing, the movement, all of that, I wanted to translate that into kind of a bigger audience than I don't want to say just my fitness classes that I was teaching at the time, but I wanted to reach more people. And so with my writing background, I really, really wanted to go into magazine writing. And Shape was the first one that took me nationally. And from there, the doors kind of just started opening. Again, this is way back when the print magazines were flourishing. And at one time, I was a Lourdes fitness columnist. I was a contributing editor for Women's Day. So that was a great way to, talk not only about health, and health, fitness, and nutrition really are my passions, as are animals as well. And from there, Debbie, it's extended. 20 years ago, with all of my nutrition knowledge that I've gained throughout the writing, it became very apparent to me that I wanted to clean up my diet. As a personal trainer and a fitness pro, we always used to talk about, in the circles, we talked about clean eating. Well, clean eating, which I don't even, again, a term that's kind of well misunderstood. But at that time, it meant things like, rather than choosing, I don't know, fully loaded turkey, you choose like lean turkey, ground turkey, and fat-free turkey. And I was eating animals at the time. And Debbie, I made the connection because, again, I am such an animal lover, and that as soon as I made the connection between what I'm eating on my plate, how much I love animals, what those animal foods are doing to my body, I moved into vegetarianism and slowly, slowly, slowly stepped my way into becoming a fully plant-only eater, follow a vegan lifestyle now. And that's led to even more doors opening. So the writing is still the focus, but I've also been for a long time, PETA had a vegan mentorship program. So I was a PETA mentor. I still am a mentor with Vegan Outreach. And I'll do, a lot of stuff with people who just contact me looking for advice. So
Nice. That's great. And as a journalist, what trends are you seeing today in the health and wellness industry?
Well, I think there are a lot of things, and I think the biggest one that everybody could probably point to, not being, even if you're not a journalist, is mental health. There's
Mhm.
definitely more of awareness on mental health. I mean, I think that if you turn on the national news, you'll hear more about that. So people are starting to talk more about depression and anxiety. But I would also say, Debbie, that there's been an increase in more awareness about brain health in general. So, brain health, not only as it relates to mental well being, but also cognitive function. So, what are the habits that you're doing today that will keep your brain active and engaged and not fall victim perhaps to dementia and then as a result Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the big things we're seeing. Gut health is certainly a huge topic these days as more studies show the connection between gut health and overall health. We know that 70% of the immune system lies in your gut. So that's kind of a big deal right now to get that immune system as strong as possible. I think we're hearing more about, and also too on that gut health, we have more companies making products. Doesn't mean that they're all great for you, but they're all making products that are gut health oriented.
Mhm.
And then, part of that too is we know that the gut loves to eat fiber, and the only place you get fiber is from plants. So there's a rise in plant-based eating, and the interest in plant-based eating is really, really high. And of course, the Mediterranean diet still remains a plant-based diet, but there's a lot more attention on the Mediterranean diet these days because we're seeing so many studies showing, again, that gut health, Mediterranean diet, a plant-based or a plant-only diet can really impact your overall health. And I think now when we have so many illnesses going around, that's become a very big topic. There's still a focus on, and in terms of like the movement space, in terms of exercise, we're talking now about sitting. We're still talking about sitting less, but now we're saying, okay, not just sit less, but let's move a little bit while we're sitting less. Maybe every five minutes, every half hour, we've kind of come to that realization that that's kind of a good thing. So it doesn't have to be structured activity, but we know a little bit more about that. And then there's a huge focus on sleep as well, because we know that Americans are not getting the sleep they need. So I think all of those are playing in.
Oh, for sure. And I could tell you, sitting up here in Canada, Canadians are this exactly the same. We're not getting enough sleep. And yeah, it's definitely something that we need to look at.
Yeah.
So, Karen, I know you're focused a lot on, when you're coaching on a vegan lifestyle. What does a vegan lifestyle mean to you? Like, yeah.
Yeah, Debbie. Well, I think you probably heard me say I qualify this a little bit because there's a difference between plant-based and there's a vegan. So what I tell people usually is that I follow a plant-only diet,
Mhm.
which means that I primarily focus on whole foods, so fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans, seeds, nuts. Does not mean that I'm not going to eat that vegan food every now and then, but I'm focusing on that. And I follow a vegan lifestyle, practice a vegan lifestyle. And what that means to me is not only have I removed cruelty and animals basically from my plate, but I also don't use them in my life in any
Mhm.
way except as companion animals or, when I'm visiting a sanctuary, a farm sanctuary, something like that. So a vegan lifestyle really again encompasses what we call in the old yoga term, or the old, well, it's not old, but ahimsa, which is the concept of nonviolence. So I really bring that into every aspect of my life. So when I'm looking, let's say, at I don't know, anything to buy, does it have any kind of animal product, whether that's in my cosmetics, whether that's in my clothing, my shoes, does it have animals? It's not that I'm only not, I'm not eating animals, but I'm also not using them. And I don't support things that use them. So no, I don't go to circuses or zoos, things like that. So
All right. And you talked a little bit already about the kind of eating a plant only or a plant-based diet. And what are the benefits that you see from that lifestyle, is especially with respect to the eating part in the health?
wow, this could be a topic of a whole day, right? There are so many benefits. And the biggest thing that I like to point people to immediately is you're going to see an increase in your energy. So I think that for so many people who are struggling, they reach for the coffee, they reach for the caffeinated drinks, even in the afternoon. Energy will increase. Mood also increases as well. So these are really, really significant things that start changing almost immediately. And those are the things that you might be able to notice. But there are so many other things, Debbie. We know that a plant only, or as close as you can get to a plant only diet, will lower your risk of every chronic disease, and that includes Alzheimer's as well. So we're talking brain health as well. We're talking about lowering depression. Parameters that your doctor might check. So your blood pressure, your cholesterol, those things after a few weeks of eating a plant-only diet, even a plant-based, if you can really push up the plants in your diet, you're going to see those changes at your next doctor's appointment. The other thing, I don't like to make this the focus of it, but because it is a concern for so many people, you will naturally, and I do not mean that in a gimmicky way, you will naturally lose weight by putting more plants on your plate and limiting the animal products or eliminating them completely. You will lose weight, even if that's not your number one reason for doing this
Well,
switch.
those are some great benefits. Now, when you look at making that change, what's the process for transitioning to that? Well, I'm just going to say to the plant-based lifestyle. And I mean, if you want to go a little bit further, certainly I'm happy for you to talk about how do you transition to a vegan lifestyle?
Debbie, I think first of all, I think again, you have to define what you want out of this. So how far are you, first of all, how far do you want to take it? Do you want to eat 100% plants? And where are you right now? I would say do an evaluation of your diet right now. How much of your diet is fruits and vegetables, whole grains? I would say write down, several days worth of your food intake and just kind of look and see where you are. From that point, then you can look and say, okay, how far do I want to take it? How much am I willing to do? Can I change a day? Can I change every breakfast? Can I change, should I just start with meatless Monday, which is a good way for a lot of people just to dip their toes in, add on a Tuesday. Once you've got Monday, Tuesday going, I think, Debbie, it really depends on where you are starting at initially. But I would say once you've kind of determined that, the real thing is starting to base your meals around plants. And for a lot of people, that's very difficult because I grew up in a household where I used to eat meat. I mean, I ate meat until, gosh, 20 some odd years ago. And that was always the star of the plate, right? My mom would cook like a big steak. It was right smack dab in the center. There was usually like a tiny little baked potato off to the side. And I do mean a tiny, it's not like the big baked potatoes now. And then, a little smattering of green beans off to the side. I would say flip that around. And if you still have animals on your plate to start, no problem. Make them the smallest part of your plate and really kind of then start increasing all of the other components of the plate. And if you get confused about what to eat, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has come up with a really easy way to look at a plant-only plate. This would be dividing it into 4 quadrants, and you've got your fruit, your vegetable, your whole grains, and let's say your beans. That's pretty easy. I mean, that's not a tough thing to do. Broccoli could go here, some rice could go here. You could put some black beans that have been sauteed in some, fun sauce. And then you could have, I don't know, name your fruit, strawberries, whatever you might appeal to. That could be your dessert side. So that would be a really easy way to kind of divide that plate up. But again, Debbie, I think that you have to, first of all, again, look and see where you are. Identify also your obstacles. So what do you think right now are going to be your biggest obstacles? Do you eat out a lot? Do you, have to cook for a large amount of people in your family? Is it just you? I mean, there are so many variables to consider that, again, it takes what I always say, planning. Think first about why you want to do it, what your biggest obstacles are going to be, what you're willing to change at first, and start there. Once you're kind of on that path, then continue adding. And like I said, Debbie, it could be as easy as maybe you start with, again, 1 day a week that you take all the animals out of the diet just for that 1 day. Or maybe you do only breakfast. Maybe all of your breakfasts are plant-based, and slowly start changing the other meals. So it varies for everybody, but it's, again, thinking about the concept of not, I don't like to say to people, you're eating less of something, you're eating more plants. So just find ways to add more plants to your plate. And that will automatically make, the animal side just a little bit smaller. And if you could just keep shrinking, the animal foods off the plate, that's even better. And also too, Debbie, I would encourage people to try some of the, there are so many products on the market right now. Are they all, quote unquote, as healthy as, let's say, broccoli and beans? No. But are they designed to be? No. But there are a lot of products like vegan chicken, vegan turkey. I mean, there's just vegan everything out there these days. You can try vegan cheese. Those could easily, vegan pepperoni, for instance, if you make a pepperoni pizza at home, you could use vegan cheese and vegan pepperoni. Those are what I call transition foods. And I still use them when I'm cooking for people, let's say, who still eat meat, and I'll put those on. Or sometimes my husband and I just really love eating that stuff, and so we'll make that. But I would say use those as transition foods. There are so many great products in the market right now that would help you have a meat-like experience without the animals.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, I mean, if you go back when you first made that change, there was probably very little out there, but the food manufacturers have really seen that this is a growing trend, and there's been a huge influx of products just in the last even couple of years.
Yes. And I think people would be surprised if you haven't looked in your grocery store. I mean, if this is something completely new to you, go into that frozen meat section, go into the frozen food section, even into your milk section, and see all of the plant milks. That's another easy way to get going. I always say one of the easiest things to do is to knock the dairy out of the diet. There are so many plant-based milks that you could splash on your cereal in the morning. You could put creamer, vegan creamer in your coffee if that's what you like. There's, egg substitutes. Just Egg, for instance, is a fantastic product to use in place of eggs. So, again, I would say do some experimenting and have some fun with that. But yes, you're right. It's much easier these days.
For sure. And also some of, like, there are vegan cheeses and products that actually are whole food and made from, for cashew cheeses.
Right.
They're definitely not, they're a luxury item, definitely, but you can get them and they are delicious. Absolutely.
Yes, agree.
We use them for special occasions in our house.
Well, I was going to say, yes, there are some great cheeses out there that I love making risottos with. And Debbie, that it is fantastic stuff. And when I serve it to people who eat meat, they're just like, there's no animal in here.
Yeah.
No, there's not.
And I think it tastes better. In my opinion, anyway, I think sometimes it tastes better. I know, I have family members who've never liked a heavy cream sauce, and yet they love a cashew cream meal, something with cashew cream, because it's not as heavy. It's quite light.
Right.
So, there's lots of ways to make tasty food.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the, going plant-based, in your kind of experience, how long what's the typical time frame that it would take somebody to make that? I know everybody's different, you could just jump in and do it today, but I think most people need a chance to dip their toe in and take some time to really kind of master that type of eating.
I agree, Debbie. There are some people who will go overnight and they'll say, I'm done with, eating animals completely and I want to eat all plants, and they'll switch overnight. I have found that to be a very rare individual. It is not the way that I did it. Again, I kind of stepped into it taking, red meat out, taking chicken out. Dairy was actually the last thing that fell out of my diet. And, replacing it with, plant milks and things like that. But again, it's so variable, and I know that that's a hard thing to say, but I would say allow several weeks for the transition. And there's no right or wrong. In other words, there's no you have to cross the finish line at this point. You have to reach this goal at this time. Any step you make toward eating more plants is a step in the right direction. And whether you do it, again, there depends on how many obstacles you have in your way. It depends on, what your circumstances are right now. How much time do you have to devote to eating, change in eating? But I would say allow several weeks and experiment with the foods. Give yourself time to experiment, to find out what works and what doesn't work. And don't, again, a lot of times I remember the process of switching, because I would go 100% plants, vegan, as we'd said back then, and then I would step out of it and I'd be like, it's not about, the famous phrase, it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I would say expect at least several weeks, depending on where you're starting from, what your obstacles are. Again, there are people who can go overnight and just change everything. If you can do it, the more power to you. I'm not one of those individuals. So
I think it's, as you said, it's pretty rare.
yeah.
To be honest, I kind of did that, but I call myself an accidental vegan because I didn't intend to do it. I started doing a juice fast and decided not to add back those foods. It was just, so I kind of reverse engineered it.
Well, and actually probably what you did too, and I think that people should know too, that it does take your taste buds a little bit of time to change. So when you start eating, let's say, more vegetables, and again, we always think of the kids who don't like vegetables and you cringe when your mom serves you vegetables. My sister and I used to hide them under our plate, which I don't know why, because the plate always get picked up. We didn't have a dog in the house. We couldn't, just hand it off to a dog. But I think that your taste buds are going to take some time to adapt, because with the standard American diet, you're very used to a high fat, high salt, probably high sugar foods. And so it's going to take a little bit of time to retrain those taste buds. And so that's also something to expect, which is why spices, so herbs and spices are so important. Not only do they have many, many health benefits, but they also just make food, vegetables in particular, so much more amazing. So
yeah, for sure. Let's transition and move into the area of exercise now. First off, I want to know, what is Arctic walk? Or no, Nordic walking?
Nordic walking, yeah, Debbie, good question. A lot of people might be saying the same thing, unless you live in maybe Europe or we have Australia, you might know it. But Nordic walking is a dryland form of training for cross-country skiers. Mm-hmm. It was actually started in Finland, so the story goes, in the 1960s. It was brought in by a physical education teacher who wanted her students to do more activity. And the reason for using poles with walking is you just use more of your body than you do with walking or running. And it became so popular that it became again a dryland training for cross-country skiers. Several national cross-country ski teams use it for training, but it's the national sport of Finland. It's a sport that can be enjoyed by anybody. And basically it means that you're walking with specially designed poles. They can't be trekking poles or Nordic skiing poles or even downhill skiing poles. They have to be specific to Nordic walking, and you can do it on pavement, you can do it on grass, you can do it on kind of gravelly road, beach even. Competitions are generally held on pavement, so it's just like the world records I have in it are in marathon distance, and it's on pavement. So I was in marathons where there were other runners and walkers, but we have, the difference being is that we have judges on the course like race walkers do, to make sure we're not breaking two main rules. But it's basically walking as you normally would, but walking with poles. Those poles, just you push off the pavement. You can go faster than normal walking, fitness walking, not as fast as race walking. And actually, I can run faster than I can Nordic walk. But again, I love Nordic walking because it pulls in the entire, well, I can't say the entire body, but I think some of the studies have shown that you can use about 93% of your muscles when you are Nordic walking. So
Wow. Now I see every so often somebody walking with poles, and I have also seen where people are doing that for physiotherapy as well. Like it's been recommended for physiotherapy, but it sounds like if you got the right poles, it would be a great way to enhance your walking just in general.
it would, and you can take it to any level, Debbie. So I mean, there's obviously the very elite level where I am, or you can use it just at, I don't want to say just, but for fitness walking. It does not have to be intense. What I love about it is that, again, it brings in the upper body. So many of us are, unless you're doing strength training, which you should be doing, the upper body often goes, I don't want to say dormant, but we don't use it a lot. We think about walking and it's primarily our legs. You think about running, it's your legs. You think about biking and it's your legs. I mean, the core gets a little bit involved too. But when you bring the poles in, you really do use that upper body. And so you develop better posture, you increase the muscles, especially in the back of the arms, the back of the legs. So yeah, it can really enhance, but you can take it at any level of intensity. And what I love about it is that even when you're going at a high intensity, what we call the rating of perceived exertion doesn't feel as hard, let's say, as if you're running. So you can be a high intensity and your rating of perceived exertion, RPE, is low. You could be at a low intensity and your RPE is still low. It's once you get used to doing it, it's a very comfortable exercise to do.
Wow, it sounds interesting. So to be honest, most of the guests that I've had so far are focusing on other areas of expertise and not exercise. So I'm really excited to ask you a few questions. Maybe the first question is, why is exercise so important?
Oh, again, another topic that you could go on for hours, right, Debbie? And I think for the same reasons that eating plants are. First of all, we know that exercise does increase your energy. And I know that for a lot of people who, let's say, do a long day at work and then they come home and they're just like, oh, I'm just too exhausted to exercise and it's just going to make me more tired. No, it's actually going to have the opposite effect. So it actually stimulates your energy, again, decreases symptoms of depression almost as much as medication, some studies have found, decreases stress, decreases anxiety, helps you sleep better. We also know exercise lowers the risk of, again, almost every chronic disease. So we're talking heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's. I mean, all of the big diseases, it does that as well. It increases mood. I think I mentioned that, productivity. There are just, and all of this too, leading to a longer lifespan. So it can really increase not just quantity of life, but quality of life as well. And we know there's again another saying, if you rest, you rust. If you stop moving, you will stop moving. You just, if you want to stay active throughout your entire life, you really do need to move your muscles. And that doesn't have to mean that you're out there running marathons. It can mean that you're walking around your house more. You're taking a little bit longer stroll around to get your mail. If you walk outside to get your mailbox. Maybe you walk your dogs extra a day. Maybe you take a little bit more stretching breaks throughout the day. So there are so many reasons to exercise, but again, I think that if you're talking about living the highest quality life that you can for as long as you can, exercise has got to be a key component of it. Note that, Debbie, I didn't mention weight loss, because what we know about exercise is that it helps you maintain weight loss, but it is not as good for weight loss as changing what's on your plate. So you
Okay,
can't ever outrun, as they say, or outwalk, out exercise a bad diet.
that makes sense. That makes sense. So for somebody who's just getting started now, so they may be in that place where they're not doing anything right now, what are your recommendations? How do they get started, and what kind of activities should they be doing?
Well, again, I would say look at where you're starting from. And the first thing I'd say is plan, make a plan. Well, actually, let me back up a step. The first thing that you should do is know your why. This is really my number one for any behavior change. Why do you want to exercise? What is your goal in exercising? What's bringing you to want to exercise? And it has to be maybe more than just your doctor told you to, or it really has to come from within. What do you want from exercise? And I think if you have that in your head first, that's going to help you keep with the exercise. Second thing is to have a plan. And by that, I mean, think about, first of all, the exercises you like to do, or any activity. What kind of activity do you like to do? Just because your friend says she goes to an XYZ class at so-and-so gym and it's the best class for getting in shape or whatever, or it's the best activity, doesn't mean it's the right activity for you. So I think you need to think about the activities that you enjoy, because the more you enjoy it, the longer you'll stick with it. Once you've kind of identified those, then, Debbie, it's a matter of saying, okay, how many minutes, how much time am I willing to devote each day? Can I do this every day? Or every day, I also say, is kind of it's a big hurdle to start with. I say start with just a few days a week. You know, maybe your goal is to move. Maybe it's to walk. Maybe you love to walk, and walking is convenient. I'm not saying it's the activity for everybody, but it is the most convenient activity. So maybe you start by taking even just walks around your office or your house or a mall, for instance, if you don't want to be outside, or if the weather's bad, or if it's not a conducive atmosphere to walking. You know, maybe you take 5 or 10 minutes just to move a little bit more, and then you keep adding from there. The should type of exercise is, again, really anything that you enjoy, but we do know that there are government guidelines, and these are passed on, and not just passed on, but endorsed by numerous fitness organizations. So we know that recommendations for physical activity call for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise every week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise a week, or a combination of the two. Roughly, it's easy to think of it like 5 days a week of 30 minutes of activity. Doesn't have to be at once. That's also daunting for a lot of people. So if I don't like to say start with 30 minutes right away if you've been doing nothing. Start with 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
See if you can get 5 minutes in. And if 5 minutes isn't good, start with 1 minute. Really, every minute counts. And what we know too is that as you build those minutes, it doesn't have to be all at one time. So you could do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. In fact, Debbie, that's why I say you can sit less, move more by every hour, setting your alarm or whatever, and moving for 5 minutes. If you did that for 8 hours a day, 8 times 5, you would have 40 minutes of activity, which is pretty darn good. So that's the aerobic activity component. And generally, we want to talk about getting that heart rate up. So you should feel a little breathless while you are doing whatever activity you're doing. The second thing, Debbie, that we talk about is strength training, which is so important for so many other reasons. So again, we know that we lose muscle mass naturally as we age. So as a result, then we become weaker and more frail. We're more likely to have balance issues as a result. You're not able then to, let's say, pick up that, maybe you used to be able to pick up your 20-pound bag of cat food or a 40-pound bag of dog food for your animals, and you can't do that anymore. Strength training, again, is crucial for everybody, an entire lifespan. So even if you're in your 20s, your 80s, wherever you are, again, generally about 2 times a week, training your entire body. There are lots and lots of free fitness videos and things like that that you can find online to do that. The third piece of the puzzle is also stretching and flexibility. So again, to kind of keep those joints and muscles limber, again, so that you can, this is now we're talking about, so that you can reach onto the top of a counter. Let's say you've got a glass way at the top of your counter and you've got to reach up for it. That flexibility is going to help you do that. Flexibility will also help you move better as you age. So whether that's stretching, yoga, Tai Chi, there's so many ways that you can get that activity. And again, I like to break them up into chunks throughout the day. But again, finding the why will keep you through with all of this. And whether the why is, I want to change my diet, I want to exercise more. Again, knowing that why and keeping it top of mind, even writing it down on many pieces of paper and sticking it in Post-it notes everywhere.
And so how, if you're, somebody who's just starting from scratch right now, looking to build a new, healthier lifestyle for themselves, how do you balance the food and the exercise? Because, we talked about not, it's hard to do it all at the same time. So if it's hard to change your diet, adding in the exercise is hard too. So how do you kind of balance the food and the exercise when you're just starting?
Well, I would say, Debbie, on both sides, start small. Change does not have to, again, as we talked about for the change in the eating, change doesn't have to happen overnight for the fitness, nor should it, because again, what we don't want to do is push the body so much that you become injured. And then that defeats the purpose because you can't move then if you're injured. So I think what really needs to happen is maybe it's taking one goal for the diet change and one goal for the fitness change. So maybe the diet change might be something like, I want to eat one more, let's say two more servings of vegetables a day. Perfect. Make that your goal. That's your diet goal for however long you want to maintain that. So your diet goal is more servings of vegetables a day. Meanwhile, on the fitness side, you just want to say, I want to move for 5 minutes today. That's it. That's all. I don't want people to go big. I don't want them to set huge expectations for those first several weeks. It is really what I find, Debbie, is that when people set things, goals, expectations that are too high, that bar is habit behavior change is hard. There is absolutely no denying that fact. When you are introducing a new habit, a new behavior, it's not easy. So you have got to start small. So I think that if you can focus on just one thing about your nutrition side that you want to change, one thing about your fitness side that you want to change, get those two things mastered. Now let's start layering in a little bit more. You've got the 5 minutes of fitness down. Fantastic. Let's go to 10. You've got 2 vegetables down. Awesome. Let's go to maybe one more vegetable and a fruit a day. I mean, so it's really honestly taking it in baby steps, and maybe you find other ways to separate or, to break apart those goals. But those are just examples of really simple ways to do it, because I think that you're right. It can be very overwhelming to say, I'm going to change everything at once. And even if it's to the point that you just want to say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my nutrition to start, or I'm going to focus on my exercise to start. that's okay. You're starting somewhere, and it's fine to just focus on one or the other if you want to go that way too.
And there's an old Chinese proverb that says, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And I just love that. It's so true. So just make one step today. And so, on that note, what's one simple thing that people that are listening today in our audience can do to get them started on positive changes to their health?
So we've talked about a lot of strategies related to, the movement, to eating more plants. I think, Debbie, one of the biggest things, and this is a huge part of my life, and what I will say is this: take 1 minute every day to be mindful. By that, I mean, I want you to focus on doing nothing for that minute, but whether it's sitting and listening to your breath. If you have a cat or a dog, it is, or a child, it is focusing that entire minute, and it could be longer than a minute, but that's an easy way to start. Focusing that entire minute on that dog or cat. If you're drinking a cup of tea or coffee, same thing. For that 1 minute, sip that cup of tea, that cup of coffee, and just savor. Think about everything that you're experiencing in that moment. Debbie, that's a strategy that's helped for me. Again, we have so much stress right now, and stress is kind of one of the things that keeps us from making changes in our behaviors. It stops us. It's hard to do everything at once, and you get overwhelmed, and so you just fall back on your old ways. Taking this minute break every day, and if you could work it in maybe several times a day, is a good way just to kind of refocus, to get that mind back in your space, and just to say, okay, I am here. Now you can then, once you get out of that minute of mindfulness, you can then say, okay, I was going to think about adding 2 vegetables to my day. So I was about to prepare 2 of those vegetables until I got pulled away from all of these other things. But I just realized I'm going to go do those 2 vegetables. I mean, something as simple as that it would be my number one strategy, along with all of the other things we talked about, which is, again, standing and moving maybe 5 minutes every hour, that type of thing. Adding, again, thinking about adding a fruit, a vegetable to each meal. Those sorts of things are easy. And also, too, W, the other thing, like I said, I would stress again and again and again, find your why. Why are you doing this? Because it will keep you anchored to what you're trying to do. For me to go vegan was it's a big deal. A lot of people, my family was just devastated when they heard me giving up all the traditional food that we ate. And I had to remember why I was doing it in order to stay true to what was in my heart. So
yeah, and that's important for everybody to understand what's really true to their heart, because there will be those family members who will wonder and question and try to get you on a different path. And I have somebody in my life that will buy something vegan when I come to visit, and it's usually like a cupcake or something. And I just don't eat that stuff. And so it's really hard to say no. But I have that why and that conviction that I just don't eat those things. So anyway, so all really good stuff. Karen, I also know that you have an incredible gift for our audience today. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it and why it's really important that they take advantage of it.
sure. Well, I have a book that I wrote, which came out about 2-3 years ago now, called Anti-Aging Hacks. A lot of what we talked about today is in that book. So there are 200 total in the book, are 248 of some of my favorite research-backed strategies for aging a little more healthy and with more grace, vitality, and energy. And so I have a PDF with 23 of those 248, and I kind of cherry picked them to make sure that they were among my favorites. So I have that in a PDF form, and I know we're gonna get that to listeners. So just something, it's very simple reading. You could do one a day. You could just flip through it, see if anything resonates with you. But they're just fun little simple ways to add more health to your life.
So that would be also another way. Take those 23 tips and maybe implement one every week or every 2 weeks. And within a year or 6 months, you're on your way. And it's probably pretty simple just to try one a week. Awesome.
Yep.
Karen, I want to thank you for taking your time today and all the great information that you've been able to provide to our audience. Some really great insights. And I think I'm going to try that Nordic walking.
Well, and I will say, Debbie, if you do, and if any readers out there are interested, I'm always happy to answer more questions. So you can find me, very easily online. And again, I'm willing to, direct people in the right direction. But no, it was great chatting with you. And I always love talking about, again, how we can live a little healthier and with the, age a little better as well. So
It's a great topic. I love it. I'm so passionate about it, just as you are. So thanks again, Karen.
thank you, Debbie, and thanks everybody for listening.